Marcus Thompson was walking home from school on a warm spring afternoon. The 12-year-old boy carried his backpack full of math books and the small toolbox he always kept with him. His mother often said he was born to fix things, and she was right. The streets of Atlanta were busy as usual. Marcus liked to take the longer route home through the community center's park. Here, he could watch the old radio-controlled planes that some people flew on nice days. These toys reminded him of the drone he had fixed last week, a broken Christmas present that now worked perfectly. As he walked past the community center's main entrance, he heard a sound that caught his attention. It was like an angry bee buzzing, followed by the frustrated voice of an old man. "Oh dear, not again," the old man said. He sat in an electric wheelchair that was making strange noises. Marcus noticed the man was wearing a neat gray suit that looked a bit too warm for the weather. Marcus stopped walking. His father had always taught him to help others when he could. "Excuse me, sir, is everything okay?" The old man looked up. His face was kind, with gentle wrinkles around his eyes. "Ah, young man, my wheelchair seems to be having some problems. I am Mr. Lee Duhan, and I'm afraid I'm stuck here." Marcus moved closer, looking at the wheelchair with curious eyes. "I'm Marcus. I fix things sometimes. Would you like me to take a look?" Mr. Lee raised his eyebrows, studying Marcus with interest. "You fix things. Aren't you a bit young for that?" Marcus smiled. He was used to adults doubting him because of his age. "I fixed my mom's coffee maker last month, and my sister's tablet, and our neighbor's microwave." He opened his toolbox to show Mr. Lee his collection of screwdrivers and other tools. "Well," Mr. Lee said slowly, "I suppose it wouldn't hurt to let you look. But please be careful. This wheelchair is special to me." Marcus knelt beside the wheelchair and began checking it. The control panel was unlike any he had seen before. Instead of normal buttons and switches, it had strange symbols that seemed to glow faintly. He blinked twice, wondering if his eyes were playing tricks on him. "This is different from other wheelchairs," Marcus said, his fingers gently touching the panel. Mr. Lee tensed slightly. "Yes, it's a foreign model. Very advanced." As Marcus examined the wheelchair more closely, he noticed something odd. The parts didn't look like regular machine parts. They were smoother, almost like they were made from a different kind of metal. But somehow, Marcus could understand how they worked together, as if the machine was speaking to him through his hands. A young woman walked out of the community center and stopped suddenly when she saw them. She was wearing a blue business suit and had an elegant look about her. "Grandfather, is everything all right?" she asked, her voice carrying a hint of worry. "Ah, Jae-yun," Mr. Lee said. "This young man is helping me with the chair." Marcus noticed Jae-yun's eyes widen slightly as she watched him work. She pulled out her phone and typed something quickly, her fingers moving fast across the screen. "I think I found the problem," Marcus said, pointing to a small connection under the control panel. "These parts aren't connected right. May I fix it?" Mr. Lee and Jae-yun exchanged a quick look that Marcus didn't quite understand. Then Mr. Lee smiled warmly. "Please do, young Marcus. Show us what you can do." As Marcus began to work, he didn't notice Jae-yun stepping away to make a quiet phone call. He also didn't see the small camera hidden in Mr. Lee's tie pin, recording his every move as he confidently repaired technology that no human child should have been able to understand. Marcus was focused only on fixing the wheelchair, doing what he loved best. He had no idea that this simple act of kindness would soon change his life, and his family's life, forever. Marcus worked carefully on Mr. Lee's wheelchair, his fingers moving with surprising confidence over the strange components. The more he examined the chair, the more unusual things he noticed. The metal wasn't like any he had seen before. It felt warm to the touch and seemed to respond to his hands in ways that normal metal shouldn't. Jae-yun had returned from her phone call and was watching him work. She stood next to her grandfather, trying to look calm, but Marcus could see her fingers tightly gripping her phone. Every few minutes, it would buzz silently, and she would type quick responses. The internal structure is different, Marcus said, more to himself than to the others. It's like the parts know how to work together. He reached deeper into the control panel, his small hands perfectly suited for the delicate work. Mr. Lee leaned forward slightly. What makes you say that, young Marcus? Well, in normal machines, you have to connect everything with wires and circuits. But these parts, Marcus paused, searching for the right words. It's like they want to connect. Like magnets, but not exactly. He looked up at Mr. Lee. I've never seen anything like this before. A small smile appeared on Mr. Lee's face. You are very observant, Marcus. Most people wouldn't notice such details. As Marcus continued working, he found something even stranger. Hidden behind the main control panel was what looked like a small glass ball. It glowed with a faint blue light and seemed to pulse gently, like a tiny heartbeat. When his fingers got close to it, he felt a warm tingle in his hand. Sir, Marcus said slowly, I don't think this is a normal wheelchair. Jai-yun stepped forward quickly, but Mr. Lee raised his hand to stop her. And what makes you think that, Marcus? These parts, they're too advanced. And this, he pointed to the glowing ball. I don't think this was made in any factory I know about. Just then, a tall man in a dark suit walked up to them. He had a serious face and carried himself like a soldier. Jai-yun immediately straightened up when she saw him. Commander Sunwoo, she said quietly. Marcus noticed that Mr. Lee showed great respect to the newcomer, bowing his head slightly. Ah, Sunwoo, you arrived quickly. The man called Sunwoo looked at Marcus with intense interest. His eyes moved from the boy's face to his hands, which were still inside the wheelchair's control panel. He spoke in a low, measured voice. So this is the young engineer you reported. Marcus felt confused. Engineer. I'm just good at fixing things. Sunwoo smiled, but his eyes remained serious. Young man, you have just repaired technology that most adult engineers wouldn't even recognize. That is no small feat. Marcus looked at the tools in his hands, then at the strange components in the wheelchair. A thought began to form in his mind, but it seemed too impossible to be true. Yet, as he looked at the glowing blue ball and the oddly warm metal, he couldn't deny what was right in front of him. This isn't from around here, is it? Marcus asked quietly. And maybe you aren't either. The three adults exchanged meaningful looks. Mr. Lee's kind smile grew wider. You are even more remarkable than we thought, Marcus. Would you like to learn the truth? But I must warn you, once you know, everything will change. Marcus looked at his toolbox, thinking about all the times he had fixed things that others couldn't understand. All the times other kids had called him weird for knowing how machines worked without being taught. Maybe, he thought, there was a reason for all of that. Yes, he said firmly. I want to know. Sunwoo nodded approvingly. Then perhaps we should contact your parents. This is a conversation your whole family needs to hear. Marcus sat between his parents on a comfortable couch in a strange room inside the community center. His mother, Angela, held his hand tightly while his father, Michael, sat straight and alert. The room looked normal at first glance, but Marcus noticed that the walls seemed to shimmer slightly when no one was looking directly at them. Mr. Lee sat in his wheelchair across from them, with Commander Sunwoo standing by his side. Jai-yun had brought them all cups of water, but no one was drinking. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, Mr. Lee began, his voice gentle but serious. Your son did something remarkable today. He understood and repaired technology that no human should be able to comprehend. What do you mean, no human? Michael asked, his deep voice calm but firm. Sunwoo stepped forward. Perhaps it would be easier if we showed you. He pressed something on his watch, and suddenly the room changed. The plain walls disappeared, revealing screens and strange equipment. Soft lights pulsed along the ceiling, and holographic displays appeared in the air. Angela gasped. Marcus's eyes grew wide with wonder. Michael stood up quickly, moving in front of his family. "Please, do not be afraid," Mr. Lee said. He touched the control panel of his wheelchair, and his appearance began to change. His skin took on a slight bluish tinge, and his eyes became larger and more luminous. "We are not here to harm anyone. We are observers from a civilization far beyond your solar system." Marcus found his voice first. "You're aliens? Real aliens? We prefer the term galactic neighbors," Jai-yun said with a small smile. Her appearance had also changed slightly, her hair now showing strands that seemed to glow with their own light. "We have been on Earth for 50 years, Sunwoo explained, his own appearance now showing subtle changes that made him look both familiar and strange at the same time. "Our mission is to watch humanity's development and determine when your species might be ready for contact." "And what does this have to do with our son?" Angela asked, her arm protectively around Marcus's shoulders. Mr. Lee moved his wheelchair closer to them. "In all our years of observation, we have never encountered a human who could naturally understand our technology. Yet Marcus, without any training or guidance, was able to repair a quantum-linked mobility device, what you saw as my wheelchair. The components in that chair are based on principles your scientists haven't discovered yet," Jai-yun added. "They respond to mental patterns as much as physical interaction. Marcus didn't just fix it, he connected with it." Marcus looked at his hands, remembering the warm tingle he had felt. "Is that why I've always been good at fixing things? Because I can connect with them?" "We believe you have a very special gift," Mr. Lee said. "Your mind can understand patterns and connections that most humans cannot see yet. It is an ability we have only seen in the most advanced engineering minds of our own people." Michael sat back down slowly. "So what exactly are you suggesting?" Commander Sunwoo's expression softened. "With your permission, we would like to offer Marcus training. He would learn about technologies that humanity won't develop for centuries. He could become a bridge between our civilizations." "He's just a child," Angela protested. "He would still live at home, go to school, have a normal life," Jai-yun assured them. "We would simply provide additional education under the cover of an advanced engineering program at the community center." Marcus turned to his parents, his eyes shining with excitement and hope. "Mom, Dad, this explains everything. Why I can fix things that even adults can't figure out. Why I sometimes see patterns that no one else notices. Please, can I learn from them?" Michael and Angela looked at each other, having one of those silent conversations that parents sometimes have. Finally, Michael turned to the aliens. "If we agree to this, we have conditions." "Of course," Mr. Lee said. "We would expect nothing less from good parents." As they began to discuss the details, Marcus could hardly sit still. His mind was already racing with questions about all the amazing things he might learn. He looked at the glowing displays around the room and smiled. Finally, he had found people who understood how his mind worked, even if they had to come from another planet to find him. The next day, Marcus and his family returned to the community center. This time, they met in a larger room that Commander Sunwoo called the Introduction Chamber. Marcus's 9-year-old sister, Tanya, had come too. She sat next to him, her eyes wide as she looked at the strange symbols floating in the air around them. A new person waited for them there. Lee Hyun-ki, the chief engineer. He was tall and thin, with kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. His fingers moved constantly, as if he was always building something invisible. "Young Marcus," Hyun-ki said warmly, "I have heard much about your talent." He waved his hand, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed Marcus fixing Mr. Lee's wheelchair, but now they could see glowing lines connecting his hands to the machinery. "See these connections? Your mind creates them naturally. It is a rare gift." "Will I learn to make those glowing lines?" Marcus asked eagerly. Hyun-ki laughed softly. "You already make them. We will teach you to see them, understand them, and use them better." Commander Sunwoo stepped forward. "Before we proceed, we should explain the training program." He touched a panel on the wall, and more images appeared. Marcus would come here 3 times a week after school. We would start with basic principles of quantum engineering, then move to practical applications. What about his regular schoolwork? Angela asked, still worried. Actually, Jia-Yun said, joining them with a tablet in her hand. We believe this training will help his normal studies too. Understanding our technology requires strong skills in mathematics and science. Marcus will learn both earth science and our advanced concepts. Michael leaned forward. And what about safety? No offense, but this is all very advanced for a 12-year-old. A fair concern, Mr. Lee said, moving his wheelchair closer. That is why we have asked Lee Minna to join us. A woman entered the room, carrying what looked like a regular laptop. But when she opened it, light streamed up from the keyboard, forming a 3D display. I am the team's cultural specialist, she explained. My job is to make sure we teach Marcus in ways that are appropriate for his age and background. We will never push too fast or too hard. Tanya, who had been quiet until now, suddenly spoke up. Will Marcus get to build spaceships? The adults laughed, breaking some of the tension in the room. Not quite yet, Hyun-Ki said kindly, but perhaps someday. First, he must learn the basics. To demonstrate, Hyun-Ki placed a small cube on the table. It looked like it was made of glass, but had something swirling inside it. Marcus, would you like to try your first lesson now? Marcus looked at his parents. When they nodded, he stepped forward eagerly. Place your hands on either side of the cube, Hyun-Ki instructed. Don't touch it, just hold them close. Now, close your eyes and tell me what you feel. Marcus did as he was told. At first, he felt nothing. Then, slowly, he became aware of a gentle humming, like music he could feel but not hear. It's singing, he whispered. The pieces inside are singing to each other. When he opened his eyes, he saw the aliens smiling at each other. Even Commander Sunwoo looked impressed. That, Hyun-Ki said proudly, is a quantum harmony cube. Most beginners take weeks to sense its energy pattern. You did it in seconds. Marcus beamed with pride. For the first time in his life, his special way of understanding things wasn't strange or different. It was exactly what it needed to be. When can I start? He asked, looking hopefully at his parents. Angela and Michael shared another look, then smiled. We'll need to set up a schedule, Michael said, and we have more questions about safety and supervision. Of course, Minna agreed. We can discuss all the details now. After all, this is just the beginning of a very long journey. That evening, the Thompson family sat around their dinner table, barely touching their food. The events at the community center felt like a dream, but the small quantum harmony cube that Hyun-Ki had let them bring home sat in the center of the table, proving it was all real. I still can't believe this is happening, Angela said, watching the cube's swirling patterns. My son is being offered training by actual aliens. Michael rubbed his temples. The question is, should we let him do it? This is bigger than just learning new skills. This could change his entire life. Marcus sat quietly, pushing his green beans around his plate. He wanted to beg his parents to say yes, but he knew this was a serious decision. They needed time to think. Tanya, however, had no such hesitation. Dad, remember when Marcus fixed my tablet after the repair shop said it was dead? Or when he made Mom's old car start working just by touching the engine? He's always been different. Now we know why. That's true, Angela said slowly. I used to worry about how different he was from other kids. But now, she reached over and squeezed Marcus's hand. Just then, the doorbell rang. Michael went to answer it and returned with Lee Minna, the cultural specialist. She carried a folder filled with papers. I hope I'm not interrupting, Minna said politely. But I thought you might have more questions now that you've had time to think. They invited her to sit at the table. Minna looked at their untouched dinner and smiled understandingly. The first time I learned about Earth, I couldn't eat for 2 days. It's a lot to take in. How many other families know about this? Michael asked. None, Minna replied honestly. In 50 years of observation, Marcus is the first human we've encountered with this ability. That's why this decision is so important, not just for Marcus, but potentially for both our peoples. Angela leaned forward. What exactly would his life be like? Would he still have time to just be a normal kid? Minna opened her folder and spread out some documents. They looked like a normal after-school program schedule, but with some very unusual class names. We believe strongly in balance. Marcus would train with us Monday, Wednesday, and Friday afternoons. He would still have time for homework, friends, and family. We want him to grow up as a well-rounded person, not just a technical prodigy. And what about his future? Michael asked. Will this affect his chances of going to college, getting a normal job? Actually, Minna smiled. This training would open more doors than it closes. The basic principles Marcus learns can be applied to Earth technology too. Plus, we can provide letters of recommendation that, while not mentioning our true nature, would help with college applications. Tanya, who had been examining the schedule, pointed to something. Look, they have something called quantum games on Fridays. That sounds fun. Minna nodded. Learning should be enjoyable, especially for someone Marcus's age. We combine serious study with activities that make the concepts easier to understand. Marcus finally spoke up. Mom, Dad, I know it's scary, but I feel like this is why I've always been different. Like I was meant to find them. He touched the quantum cube gently, and it glowed brighter in response. His parents watched this simple interaction with a mixture of amazement and pride. Here was proof that their son had a gift. A remarkable, world-changing gift. Michael took Angela's hand. Maybe, he said softly, this is one of those moments where being afraid to say yes is exactly why we should say yes. Angela wiped a tear from her eye and nodded. Marcus, if this is what you want, then we support you. Just promise you'll still help your sister with her homework sometimes. Marcus jumped up and hugged his parents, his face glowing brighter than the cube. Minna smiled warmly, watching this family take their first step into a much larger universe. 2 weeks into his training, Marcus sat in the special learning room with Hyun-ki. The walls glowed with soft blue light, and floating displays showed complex patterns that would have looked like nonsense to most humans. But to Marcus, they were beginning to make sense. Now focus on the energy flow, Hyun-ki instructed, pointing to a small device on the table between them. It looked like a silver pyramid with clear sides. Inside, tiny points of light danced like fireflies. Tell me what you see. Marcus closed his eyes halfway, the way he had learned. The lights inside the pyramid weren't random. They moved in patterns, like a dance. The lights are talking to each other, he said slowly. But there's one that's not following the pattern. It's scared. Hyun-ki smiled proudly. Excellent. You're learning to read quantum emotions. Each light particle has a state of being, what we call its quantum personality. When one falls out of harmony, it affects the whole system. Can I help it? Marcus asked, his hands hovering near the pyramid. Try. Hyun-ki encouraged. Remember what we practiced. Marcus thought about the scared light particle. In his mind, he imagined reaching out to it, the way you might reach for a frightened animal. He felt the familiar warm tingle in his fingers, and suddenly the wayward light joined the dance of its companions. Perfect. Hyun-ki clapped his hands. You're learning faster than any student I've ever had. From the corner of the room, Lee Jae-won watched with interest. As the security chief, he had been skeptical about teaching advanced technology to a human child. But even he had to admit that Marcus showed remarkable talent. Try something more challenging, Jae-won suggested, stepping forward. He placed a complex machine on the table. It looked like a jumble of crystal rods and metal spheres. This is a quantum communication node. It's malfunctioning, but we don't know why. Hyun-ki frowned. That might be too advanced for. But Marcus was already studying the device, his eyes moving over its complicated parts. The crystals are singing different songs, he said. They should all be singing together, but they're not. He pointed to one crystal rod. This one is using the wrong note. J1's eyes widened. It took our diagnostic computers 3 hours to find that problem. How did you see it so quickly? Marcus shrugged. I just listened with my mind, like Hyun-Ki taught me. Remarkable, J1 muttered. Simply remarkable. Later that afternoon, during their regular progress meeting, the whole alien team gathered to discuss Marcus's development. Commander Sunwoo sat at the head of the table while Minna showed charts of Marcus's learning speed. His understanding of quantum harmonics is far beyond what we expected, Minna reported. And his natural ability to connect with the technology is unprecedented. He's not just learning our technology, Hyun-Ki added excitedly. He's understanding it in ways we hadn't considered. His fresh perspective has already helped us see new possibilities. And his security clearance? Sunwoo asked, looking at J1. The security chief nodded slowly. I admit, I was wrong to doubt. The boy has shown not just ability, but wisdom beyond his years. He asks the right questions and understands the responsibility that comes with this knowledge. Jae-yun, who had been quietly taking notes, smiled. Perhaps this is exactly why we found him now. Earth is advancing quickly. They'll need people who can bridge the gap between their technology and ours. Agreed, Sunwoo said. Continue his training. I want to see how far he can go. As they discussed future lessons, Marcus was already home, excitedly showing his sister Tanya how to make their mom's old radio pick up stations it was never meant to receive. Their parents watched from the doorway, amazed at how their son seemed to glow with happiness, finally able to be fully himself. 3 months into Marcus's training, something went wrong. It started as a normal Wednesday afternoon session, but everything changed when the lights in the training room suddenly flickered and turned red. Commander Sunwoo burst into the room, his face tense with worry. Hyun-Ki, we have a serious problem. The cloaking system is failing. Marcus looked up from the quantum puzzle he had been solving. He knew about the cloaking system. It was what kept their entire operation hidden from the rest of the world. If it failed, everyone would see their true alien nature. How bad is it? Hyun-Ki asked, already moving to the main control panel. Very bad, Jae-yun said, rushing in with a handful of glowing data crystals. The quantum matrix is destabilizing. We estimate total failure within 2 hours. Lee Yoon-ji, the team's youngest engineer, joined them at the controls. Her fingers flew over the holographic displays, trying to stabilize the system. The harmonics are completely out of balance. It's like the quantum particles are fighting each other. Marcus watched the adults work, seeing the worry on their faces. He could feel something was wrong with the technology. It felt like hearing a beautiful song turning into noise. What about the backup systems? Sunwoo demanded. All failing, Hyun-Ki said grimly. Whatever is causing this is affecting all quantum systems simultaneously. Marcus raised his hand quietly, the way he did at school. May I look? The adults exchanged glances. Jae-won stepped forward. This is far more complex than anything you've trained with, Marcus. Please, Marcus said. I can hear the systems crying. They're in pain. Hyun-Ki looked at Sunwoo, who nodded slowly. Let him try. We have nothing to lose. Marcus stepped up to the control panel. Instead of looking at the complicated displays, he closed his eyes and placed his hands near the quantum core. The sensation was overwhelming, like listening to 1,000 voices screaming at once. But then he noticed something. There's an echo, he said softly. An echo? Yoon-ji asked, moving closer. Yes. Like when you talk in an empty room and your voice bounces back. The quantum particles are getting confused by their own echoes. Marcus opened his eyes and pointed to a particular crystal in the control array. This one is reflecting the quantum signals back into the system. It's making everything bounce around until it gets tangled. Hyun-Ki's eyes widened. Of course, the new amplification crystal we installed last week. It must be creating a quantum feedback loop. But we can't simply remove it, Jae-yun warned. The whole system would collapse. Marcus thought for a moment, remembering something from his training. What if we add a buffer? Like putting soft blankets on the walls of the echo room. Yoonji snapped her fingers. A quantum dampening field, but calibrated to only affect the reflected signals, not the primary ones. Can you create that quickly enough? Sunwoo asked. I can help, Marcus offered. I can feel which signals are the echoes. They taste different, like the difference between fresh water and water that's been standing too long. Commander Sunwoo looked at the countdown display, showing how long until the cloaking system failed. Then he looked at Marcus's determined young face. Do it. For the next hour, Marcus worked side by side with Yoonji, guiding her as she created the dampening field. His ability to sense the quantum patterns helped them tune it perfectly. When they finally activated it, the screaming in Marcus's mind gradually turned back into the familiar, beautiful song of properly functioning quantum technology. The red lights faded back to blue. The crisis was over. Well done, young friend, Sunwoo said, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. You may have just saved our entire mission. Marcus smiled tiredly. I just listened to what the quantum particles were telling me. Sometimes the best thing to do is stop and listen. The aliens looked at each other with new respect. This human child had not only understood their technology, he had seen it in a way they never had before. 6 months after the crisis, the Thompson family gathered in the community center's special chamber for a ceremony. The room was filled with floating lights that changed colors like a gentle rainbow. Marcus stood in the center, wearing his best clothes and trying not to fidget. Commander Sunwoo addressed the small group. Today marks a historic moment in the relationship between our peoples. Marcus Thompson has not only mastered our basic technology, but has shown us new ways to understand it. Marcus's parents beamed with pride. Angela wiped tears from her eyes while Michael stood tall, his hand on Tanya's shoulder. Even Tanya was quiet for once, watching her brother's big moment. Mr. Lee Doohan moved his wheelchair forward. It now hummed with a perfect quantum harmony that Marcus had helped fine-tune. When a young boy offered to fix my wheelchair that day, I had no idea we would find something so precious, a bridge between our worlds. Hyun-ki stepped forward carrying a small box. Inside was a crystal pendant that glowed with a warm blue light. This is a quantum resonance key, he explained. It marks Marcus as the first human certified to work with our technology. It will help him connect with quantum systems even more easily. As Hyun-ki placed the pendant around Marcus's neck, Lee Minna spoke. But this ceremony is about more than just one boy. Today, we also announced the creation of the Earth-Galaxy Bridge program. Jae-yun activated a display showing plans for a new teaching center. Thanks to Marcus's success, we have received approval from our homeworld to seek out other gifted young humans. They will learn as Marcus did, helping to prepare Earth for future contact with the galactic community. And guess who they picked to help teach the new students? Yoonji said with a grin, nudging Marcus. Marcus looked up in surprise. Me? But I'm still learning myself. Sometimes the best teacher is someone who just walked the same path, Jae-won said. The security chief, once so skeptical, now smiled warmly at Marcus. Your unique way of understanding our technology will help other young humans learn. Tanya raised her hand. Can I join the program? The adults laughed, but Sunwoo answered seriously. We will test all interested young people. The ability to connect with quantum technology is rare, but there are other ways to help bridge our worlds. After the ceremony, the Thompson family walked home together. The quantum pendant glowed softly against Marcus's chest, matching the stars that were just beginning to appear in the evening sky. I'm proud of you, son, Michael said softly, not just for learning all this amazing technology, but for being brave enough to use your gift to help others. We all are, Angela added, hugging him. Though I still want you to finish your regular homework before any quantum physics lessons. Marcus laughed, feeling happier than he ever had. He remembered that day when he first saw Mr. Lee's strange wheelchair. How could he have known that offering to help would change not just his life, but potentially the future of human-alien relations? As they walked, he touched the pendant and felt the familiar warm tingle of quantum energy. Above them, the stars twinkled like the quantum lights he had learned to understand. Somewhere up there was the home world of his alien teachers. And thanks to a chance encounter and a boy's natural gift, Earth was one step closer to joining the greater galactic community. "Mom," Marcus said suddenly, "can we have pizza to celebrate?" His parents laughed. He might be Earth's first quantum technology expert, but he was still their 12-year-old boy. And that was exactly as it should be.